is abundant but overwhelmed, affluent yet desperately wanting more, connected yet starved for human interaction. This is the world that we live in. And I don't know about you, but it's not the world that I want. And that's why just on 5 years ago now, I made a choice. A choice to intentionally adapt, which is a term I'll explain in a moment. A choice to step off that busy hamster wheel that so many of us seem stuck on and create the space and skill to shape the future. Not only for me, but for this little guy, Sax. This is my 9-year-old son. I wanted to create a world where he and his little mates could thrive. And so I did something perhaps a little crazy. I took what looked like the seemingly perfect life and turned it completely upside down in pursuit of happiness. So for those of you wondering what that might look like, I left a 16-year career as an executive in a global giant at the top of my game, as a female with high potential, which I always love that term, because I've never met one with no potential. I relocated my family from Perth back to Melbourne, which is the equivalent of moving, say, from New York to LA. I left an 18-year relationship and started my own purpose-driven company, Bkindred, all within 7 months. I then gave myself a crazy title, Happiness Hacker, which I made up, and I set myself a bold mission. A mission to teach 10 million humans by 2025 how to intentionally adapt in order to future-proof happiness. Because all I kept seeing was a world where so many, with so much, seemed so unhappy. I wanted to challenge the flawed societal definition of success and the angst and overwhelm that it seemed to be creating for so many of us. Now, it seems as though everyone at the moment is striving to be more efficient, have more convenience, and be more productive. But today, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to think, what if busy equaled bullshit? Now, it was not that long ago I was running a program that we've created with this exact name, the Busy Equals Bullshit Challenge, and I can't tell you how popular it is. Now, I decided the first time I ran it to ask people as they came into the room, tell me why you would come to a program with this name. We're talking professionals, executives in large corporations. One by one, their answers were the same. I'm feeling crazy busy, I'm often anxious, and I want you to teach me how to be more productive. Now, I was curious about the word productive. And so I said, let me just make sure I've got this right. Yeah? You're crazy busy, it's making you feel overwhelmed and anxious often, and you want me to teach you how to squeeze more into an already full day. To which they said yes. Welcome to the busy epidemic, my friends. This is a place where every waking moment is jam-packed. There is no space for stillness. This is a place where podcasts are played at 1.5 to 2 times the speed. Put your hand up if you're guilty of that one. Trying to squeeze that little bit more in. This is a place where sleep is restless. It is a place where creativity and innovation is stifled. Now, I thought it might be a bit of fun to test the level of busy in this room. So what I'm going to get you to do now, I'm going to go rogue and I'm going to jump off the stage. A bit random. That's what us Aussies do. And I'm going to get everyone to stand up. Now, this is not a hard task. It's probably the easiest thing you're going to do today. Now, I want you to sit down if you have not used the word busy once in the last week. Uh-oh. If you've not used the word busy once in the last week, Okay, now the first thing I want to tell you is you're not alone, clearly, okay? You are not alone because we've worked with busy professionals and 93% of them tell us that they use the word busy between 1 and 4 times a day. You can sit down. Thank you. And now I'm going to, not so graciously, climb back onto the stage. Now, 93%, 1 and 4 times a day. Today, what I want to challenge you to do, as we move through this conversation, I want you to ask yourself, that amount of busy in your life, using that word that frequently, how is that impacting your work and your effectiveness at work? How is that impacting your life? And I think most importantly, how is that level of busy impacting the relationships that you have? Now, what I find fascinating, and you've heard Peter speak about this earlier this week, is the irony of the busy epidemic is that it occurs at the most abundant time in history. Yeah? If we look to nearly every social indicator from infant mortality to poverty, through the declining costs of energy, communications, technology, we have never been better off. But I don't think you'll be surprised to find that there is a mindset disconnect, and it is significant. Because according to the brilliant research by Bobby Duffy in his excellent book, The Perils of Perception, which I highly recommend, because it's a book about humans and how wrong we are about so many things, and it's all research-based, less than 10% of us globally believe that the world is getting better. We have an abundance of accessibility and possibility. It has never been a better time to realise your big dreams for change. The access you have to resources and other people around the world is better than it has ever been. But at the same time, we have an abundance of overwhelm, a busy epidemic, and we are experiencing a significant decline in the mental health of humanity. Our focus on doing, I honestly believe, is compromising our state of being. Busy continues to hold us back as many of us unconsciously respond to distraction. And sadly, what I observe in my work with thousands in this space is that the things that truly matter and light us up as human beings are getting sidelined. And what does busy even mean? Seriously, what does it mean? The word contains no useful information. And interestingly, more often than not in my work, I have discovered that busy is code for something else. So ask yourself, the last time you used the word busy, what was the narrative in your head? What were the words that you were using? What was your busy really code for? Well, I thought I might share with you today some of the things that I've discovered busy is code for, and you're welcome to check these off if any of them resonate. Busy is an anxious trend, and more often than not, we have discovered that busy is code for anxiety. Now, what do we know about anxiety? Well, like busy, it's at epidemic proportions. And the next generation, who's got kids? Yeah, the next generation are the hardest hit. The level of anxiety and suicide in the next gen is beyond anything we've ever seen. The other thing that we know is that anxiety makes a lot of people a lot of money. In the US here alone, the US drug market for anxiety medication on its own by the year 2025 is set to be worth $7.5 billion a year. Where I come from in Australia, anxiety costs taxpayers $7.2 billion a year. Now, I was trying to find information out there, research out there that looked at the busy epidemic globally and the link with anxiety and the anxiety epidemic globally, and I couldn't find any global stats around anxiety that looked at the connections. But what I did find, which I thought was really interesting, and sometimes I do love Google, was that as the busy epidemic grows, so too do anxiety searches on Google. This is the trend line over the last 10 years, which is roughly the period since we've introduced iPhones. And what if we look at the top 5 countries searching on anxiety? I'll allow you to make your own inferences, but when I look at that, I think they're highly connected countries, technologically connected countries. What else is busy code for? Is your busy code for distraction? When was the last time you sat alone with your own thoughts? Not meditating, just in the stillness. No tech distractions, no Netflix, just you and this. Your attention has become a highly valuable commodity. So valuable, in fact, that companies like Netflix are now touting sleep as one of their biggest competitors. That is true, look it up, the CEO talks about it all the time. Cal Newport, in his brilliant book Deep Work's done research around the fact that we have wired a generation to operate in nothing but a constant state of distraction. I recently read that they reckon that the way that the brains of the next generation are forming looks different to the rest of us, based on the way that we are unconsciously engaging with some technology. Is your busy code for short-termism? The dopamine hits released as we unconsciously engage with technology is wiring our brains for the instant fix, the quick gratification, moving us towards short-termism. Now, what I mean by this, the problem with this instant gratification is that we are unconsciously being wired to actually lean away from the discomfort of long-term problem solving, the kind of problem solving where we don't accept the first answer that presents itself, the problem solving where real innovation and creativity is born. Is your busy code for loneliness? We have never been more technologically connected yet humanly disconnected. We have a busy epidemic. Alongside it, we have an anxiety epidemic. And would you believe, in a number of countries, we now have a loneliness epidemic. And I don't know that we are looking hard enough at the interrelationships between these 3 things. Here in America, a recent study by the University of California said 50% of Americans state that they are lonely on a regular basis. And we also know from a health perspective, long-term loneliness has the same health implications as obesity. Maybe your busy is code for self-validation, the ego at play. If I'm not busy, I'm not needed. Maybe I'm not good enough. Or perhaps your busy is code for FOMO. If I don't say yes to every opportunity, I fear I might miss out. It's a brilliant reframe on this. I heard it recently termed by one of the founders of Basecamp. He's got a term called JOMO. Has anyone heard of this? The joy of missing out. If you suffer from FOMO, try a reframe and see what happens. It's created a lot of spontaneity and space in my life for thinking. Now, the other thing that we have found through our work with busy people, and this I find really sad and concerning, is that busy blocks human connection. A number of professionals have told us through our research that they use busy on a regular basis in the workplace to shut down conversations. Busy is blocking not only human connection, but the depth of our relationships. Now, I think this is hugely problematic. And the reason I think this is problematic is because I honestly believe that human connection is one of the key skills to thrive in an exponential era. The less we humanly connect, the less we build skill in being able to read each other, understand one another, which impacts our ability to empathise. And we've heard how important empathy is in the future, which then impacts our ability to have hard conversations, difficult conversations, which most people I find now avoid, which then impacts the level of resilience we build, which then feeds into an anxiety epidemic. Now, overlay across all of this insight the fact that in the next 5 years, we're going to have 4 billion new minds coming online. How do we help these people avoid the busy epidemic that we've unconsciously walked into? How do we help them intentionally adapt? And I think most importantly, how do we help them realise the potential of this abundance that's just outside of what it feels like is our reach? In order to thrive, not just survive, I honestly believe we need to cease reacting and start intentionally adapting. Let me ask you an honest question. How skilled do you feel at being able to cope with the pace and scale of change that we are experiencing? Knowing that this is the slowest pace of change we will ever experience again. How skilled do you feel in being able to intentionally adapt? Well, I've spoken about this term intentional adaptability a few times now, so I thought I might give you an example of someone who practices a little less busy in their day and a little more intentionally adaptable, and then we'll dig deeper into this concept.
I also remember Warren showing me his calendar, and
I love this.
I had every minute packed, and I thought that was the only way you could do things, and the fact that he is so careful about his time.
Can I show this to the audience? Yeah.
He has days
that there's nothing on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm trying to show.
Some of the best
And
well, this is October.
it's very high tech. Be careful.
No,
you might not understand.
I'm going to hold. I'm not going to show the thing. But this is the week of April, of which there are only 3 entries for a week.
Yeah, there'll be 4 maybe by April.
File tax.
So that taught you what? Not to crowd yourself too much and give yourself time to read and think and...
Right, that you control your time, and that sitting and thinking may be a much higher priority than a normal CEO who, there's all this demand and you feel like you need to go and see all these people. It's not a proxy of your seriousness that you filled every minute in your schedule.
And people are going to want your time.
Yeah,
and it's the only thing you can't buy. I mean, I can buy anything I want, basically, but I can't buy time.
Can't buy time. I don't know about you, but if it works for Warren Buffett, I'm always interested. Now, the other thing that seems to be coming up a lot in the conversations I have now with my clients in the corporate world is this need for our society to be more adaptable. And Min spoke yesterday about an adaptability quotient. And it's funny, I became really interested probably about 18 months ago around this concept because people kept telling me, how do I future ready, or asking me, how do I future ready my children? How do I make sure that they have happy lives? How do we help our employees be more engaged, happier, more well, more innovative? Now, I came across an article out of Harvard which spoke about your AQ, your adaptability quotient. And it spoke about it being more important than your EQ or your IQ in the context of the future. It was the new competitive advantage. Now, it made a lot of sense to me, but I thought adaptability alone was problematic. Because if we look around in our society at the moment, we have a lot of adaptation going on and it's unconscious. You only need to look at how many of us are now addicted to our mobile phones. That's an adaptation. And so I thought we needed to take this concept of an adaptability quotient a step further. I wanted to bring intention to the forefront of how we adapted. I wanted to help people bring consciousness and meaning to the forefront of how they made decisions. And out of this desire and the strong need that I saw for it across generations, in the context of being able to thrive in the future, IAQ was born. So what is your intentional adaptability quotient? Well, the way that I define it is that it is the measure of how skilled you are in making intentional change, and intentional is the key word here, in a complex environment that is evolving at speed. Now, you may be really surprised to hear, I don't go into corporations and tell them how to do more stuff. I actually teach people how to slow down, how to create space in their diaries, and how to learn to think again for long periods of time. Surprising, isn't it? Now, when I think of the intentionally adaptable, I think of them as the future shapers. Yeah? These are the people who take control of their time. They say no, and they say no often because they know exactly what impact they want to have in the world, and they want to create the space to focus solely on that. These people thrive in uncertainty and complexity, and they trust the discomfort of not accepting the first answer that presents itself on Google to a problem. These people are comfortable in the stillness because they know that neurologically that is where the dots connect and it is where the best ideas come. These people cultivate deep human connections because they know opportunity lies at the other end of them. They surround themselves with unlike minds, not like minds, unlike minds. People who challenge them to look at the world through a very different lens. And their level of curiosity finds them surprising themselves almost every day. Now, when I couldn't find anyone out there teaching intentional adaptability, or with a way to profile it and a way to measure the shift in it over time so that we could help people get better at this skill, I went out and created it. Now, what does that mean? Well, I came up with a hypothesis of a behavioural profile based on my own experience of what someone who is highly intentionally adaptable would look like. I then created an assessment to go with that, and then I went out to all of my corporate clients and said to them, I want partners in experimentation. I want to create this, and I want you to build it alongside me so that I can create something that is going to be sustainable and it's going to make the world a better place. And to my surprise, companies like KPMG, Mercer, Deloitte, we're about to start with Microsoft, one of the biggest banks in Australia, and would you believe one of the top grammar schools in Melbourne got on board. And we had teachers and students learning in the same classroom together. Now, what's been fascinating, it's very early days. This is an experiment, and I think it's probably going to take us 3 to 5 years to get it right. But what has been profound in terms of insight so far is that busy is a barrier to us building the skills we need for the future. Busy people are in overwhelm, and I would argue the investment we are making in future-ready skills, if we don't deal with busy, is like filling a full pond. People just can't take any more in. We went in and started teaching curiosity first as part of our intentional adaptability program, and executives said to us, we're too busy to be curious. And that is why when we teach intentional adaptability, the first thing we teach is focus. We teach people how to focus in a world that is now designed to distract you. We teach people how to create the space to think again. When we've dealt with that barrier to adaptability, the busy barrier, we then take them into courage. Fear is the second biggest barrier to intentional adaptability. We teach people how to use fear and failure and experimentation to actually create the change that they want for themselves, in their work, and even in the world. And then when we've removed these barriers, the third thing that we give them, or we teach them, which may surprise you because it's innate, is curiosity. I call this the reward. We teach people how to be curious as a state of being. Because what we've found through our work is that most people now in the professional world think that curiosity is something that you do in your spare time, of which they tell us they have none. Our goal through this program and through the measurement of intentional adaptability is to create self-sustaining perpetual learners. People who can reinvent themselves time and time again, because that is what we need. So in closing, I want to take us back to where we began. I've made my choice, the choice to cease reacting and start intentionally adapting. And today, I want to ask you, what choice will you make? Will you find yourself busy inheriting a future that's designed by somebody else? Or will you join me, look to amplify your intentional adaptability and be part of shaping the future that humanity has always dreamed of? Thank you very much.